had a degree of realism, those negotiations, that in the long run would make it easier to include a larger group of countries. For example, Japan's concern about service liberalization in the post office financial system. I don't like those in Japan, but having a good negotiation about that and coming up with some sort of useful compromise would make it much easier to bring in other countries in the long run. So I think for both its size and for its impact on the negotiations, Japan would be a very important partner to have.
I'd like to confirm one simple thing, because TPP is such a fashionable idea, and everybody is talking about in regard to APEC. 2010 is a Boko target year. 2020 is another Boko target year. Nobody is talking about Boko anymore.
Boko is past.
Dead.
Well, no, I mean, we've declared victory, I think, in about 2010. But you're right that the 2020 could be, insofar as it would bring in all of the developing countries in APEC, could be.
So
and I think people are thinking of FTAP in a 2020 framework. 2020 but it should come up more.
Possibly. I mean, the problem, I think, of course, APEC has made this decision, and yet APEC is not a negotiating forum, so you have to have a different way of sort of reaching these sort of goals. And that could very well be the case, that we will endogenously agree to what's going on. Whatever where we're at, we'll be there. And that's my fear with ASEAN, that the ASEAN Economic Community will be a bit like that. Where we're at in 2015 will be declared to be where we should be. But I mean, it is pretty startling that by 2010, the developed countries were supposed to have a region of open trade and investment, and the value added of APEC was outside of trade facilitation was very low. I mean, the U.S. didn't even have authority to do anything more on that, so I think a lot has to change.
Well, there are many problems about China, and I don't want to discuss them more, but what about the exchange rate issue? If a country like China, which is so important in trading, does not give in flexible exchange rate, but insists on a certain degree of government intervention, then how can we tell the others, which are smaller and weaker countries, to protect exchange rate or any other kind of industries? And China, for instance, tries to monopolize a certain items of resources, and then what about others? So China seems to has a bigger political power to negotiate with the United States and others. In such a case, is it possible to proceed along the same kind of international negotiation when the bigger countries like the US and others can take initiatives?
Well, China, I guess there is an important, I think it's a Vietnamese proverb, which is, it has 3 points. The first point is that China is very big. China is our neighbor. China is very powerful, and China will be there for a long time. And I think the point that you raised is very clear, and I think the point is that we will be negotiating with China for a long time. China's economy is moving in many ways. It's reforming in many ways, and last couple of decades would have been hard to imagine before. So it is moving, but it will be a tough negotiation. I think the value of something like the TPP is that it creates a framework of rules which hopefully many countries believe is in their common interest, which gets to be a kind of norm that will be, if adopted by many countries, will be increasingly difficult for China to ignore or to not participate in. But it will be a tough negotiation, and it will include both trade issues, which cover a wide range of trade issues, both from sort of aggressive promotion of some products and possibly withholding resource products or resource competition. It will include financial issues, but China is very much a part of this global economy. They can't escape it any more than we can. And the closer we come to defining reasonable rules that many countries accept as a norm, I think the better our chances for being able to get them to accept it.
Another question, in order to sustain the mutual negotiations and the discussions in the cross-Pacific countries, don't you think that the IMF, the World Bank framework is not good enough to deal with some possible financial crisis or anything in these countries? Right now we have several ad hoc arrangements, but seems to me it's rather necessary to have an institution in which the smaller countries like ASEAN members can rely upon.
Well, actually, if I might sort of relate that directly to this TPP issue, is that we've seen in, for example, in Mercosur, that a financial crisis in one country actually leads to a crisis within the arrangement, because when you have a big depreciation from one country or the other, with open markets, it can lead to a lot of stress in terms of imports. And the question would be in the TPP, let's say that it could very well be that the TPP makes Malaysia and Vietnam more hesitant to revalue. Because even right now, they don't want to revalue that much because they're going to lose out to China. And the question is, at the margin, if they were in a free trade area that was very large, including with the US, where they have very open markets, they're very exposed, if you